have Brett the fish in the early stages of his target stick training. Currently, the target stick is a neutral stimulus, but through a period of positive reinforcement, we hope to condition it as a secondary reinforcer to be used in shaping later behavior. The stick will be used to guide the fish through a variety of later tricks, including swimming through a hoop, slalom, and limbo. Notice how in earlier trials the fish almost completely ignores the stick, but in later trials, after a period of positive reinforcement, he follows it avidly.
The first trick that we do is the hoop trick. You'll notice that the fish is unfamiliar with the stimulus of the hoop and therefore does not react to it. He has what's known as latency initially, a great period of time in between seeing a stimulus and asking on it. Ultimately, we use the appetitive stimulus of the food via the secondary reinforcer of the wand in order to provide a continuous reinforcement schedule for the fish, also known as a fixed ratio 1 schedule.
Here we have the fish on his second trick, the tunnel. We had initially hoped that the tunnel would share some contiguity with the hoop, seeing as how with either object the fish must swim horizontally through the training object. However, we see him here initially paying little attention to the stimulus and realize that we must shape his behavior.
We utilize this technique called shaping, and essentially what we do is reward successive approximations of a behavior, requiring a more advanced performance of a certain task each time before providing that reward. In this instance, the fish has just swam partly through the tube and then is provided the reward. However, later on, he must fully swim through the tube to receive the reward that is the food. Our goal is learning, which means the fish has a relatively permanent change in behavior, in this case, swimming through the tunnel.
Our third trick, called the chimney, entailed the fish swimming vertically upward through an object similar to the tunnel. Earlier trials set the chimney at an angle in an attempt to connect the trick via contiguity to the previously trained tunnel. We were hopeful initially that the fish would generalize the stimulus of the angled tunnel and swim through it automatically. Earlier trials, however, yielded no such luck. Rat still had to be fully trained. Over time, his overt or observable behavior changed and he learned to swim through the chimney without being led. Punishment was never used to create a less desirable condition in order to decrease undesired behavior. Punishment is a less effective way of learning and has its side effects.
The limbo trick tested our young Jedi as well, and he initially lacked intensity. Despite once again viewing the training setup as a neutral stimulus, we continued to use our target stick, as seen here, to emit new behaviors. The target stick could be called a contrived or artificial reinforcer because its movements are not a typical consequence of that behavior in a fish tank setting. Ultimately, extrinsic reinforcement provided as a consequence of a behavior, works again with our young Jedi rat, as he swims through, eventually on his own, and is reinforced for the behavior.
Slalom, our last trick, was the toughest of all. As usual, we started by making the fish familiar with the topography of the experiment. Slalom training resembled a change schedule with one directional change leading into another. Each set of poles serves as a discriminative stimulus to turn through to the next pair. Of course, the food at the end serves as a terminal reinforcer. Our fish never attained the ability to weave through all the poles. He did omit a behavior that entailed occasionally swimming between them on his own, but he rarely connected these behaviors without prompting.
As we worked on this behavior over the course of a couple weeks, it seemed that satiation was occurring. When an event is often repeated or prolonged, how appetitive a stimulus is can decrease. We believe this was one of the downfalls of our fish that he had in learning this trick. After considering a variable ratio and a fixed ratio schedules of reinforcement, we gave the fixed ratio of 2 and 3 an attempt. The result was noticeable but marginal improvement, likely the result of running more trials before satiation occurred. Powerful operant conditioning is